From Quito, Ecuador, my name is Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South, the evening news brief on teleSUR English. We start this new edition right now. We begin in Peru, where protesters took to the streets after President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski gave a pardon to the jailed former leader Alberto Fujimori, apparently the price he paid for votes to protect him from impeachment on Thursday. 79-year-old Alberto Fujimori learned of the pardon in his hospital bed, alongside his son Kenji, who led the 10 members of the Fuerza Popular Party to impose the impeachment of Kuczynski. Fujimori had been taken to a hospital on Saturday from prison, where he was serving 25 years for human rights abuses and corruption. Supporters of the former president, who oversaw a military campaign against rebels in the 1990s that killed tens of thousands, celebrated outside the hospital. Fujimori's daughter, Keiko, who had led the impeachment attempt against current President Kuczynski, also arrived at the hospital to visit her father.
But I have to thank PPK, Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. I have to thank him because he put his pants on to give freedom to my Chino.
We appreciate the decision made by the government. We also hope the steps that have been taken does not bring hate and promotes a reconciliation, which is what we are hoping for. Now we are going to go up and see my father. Thank you.
There were clashes with the police as anti-government protesters expressed their anger at the deal outside the Peruvian-Japanese clinic where Alberto Fujimori is being treated. They said the medical arguments for releasing him were invented and demanded justice for the thousands of civilians killed by the death squads during Alberto Fujimori's presidency.
We believe the pardon was carried out in a legal manner. The medical report that supposedly sanctioned this was a fraud. The reality is that this sadly was a political agreement between the Fujimorists and the current government of Pedro Pablo Kuczynski.
We are totally opposed to the pardon because Fujimori is a war criminal. He sterilized women against their will, had union leaders and journalists killed.
Now let's recall why Peru's former president Alberto Fujimori was jailed in 2006.
In 2009, the country's Supreme Court sentenced Alberto Fujimori to 25 years in prison for crimes against humanity and held him responsible for the killing of 25 people from Barrios Altos and La Cantuta in 1991 and 1992. The executions happened at the hands of the paramilitary group known as the Colina Group. Fujimori also pushed several neoliberal measures and became known for planning a self-coup. He was detained in Chile and extradited to Peru in 2006, where he was jailed. In July 2016, current President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski said he was against pardoning Alberto Fujimori, a stand that changed only 3 days after a Fujimori majority Congress voted no to the impeachment process against President Kuczynski, who was being accused of corruption linked to the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht.
Colombia's largest remaining guerrilla group, the ELN, has accused the government of breaking the terms of its truce, putting at risk the bilateral ceasefire. In a series of tweets, the National Liberation Army says the verification mechanism has collapsed because of the intransigence of the delegates of President Santos, making it more difficult to fulfill the ceasefire agreed until January 9th. Only 5 of the 45 cases referred to the verification body have been evaluated. The government has unilaterally increased operations of military control in areas where our forces are permanently stationed. It is now up to the government whether peace talks will take place under a bilateral ceasefire or in the middle of a war. Venezuela's Truth Commission has decided to release 80 opposition activists who were in jail accused of organizing violence during 4 months of protest earlier this year. The first 36 prisoners were freed on Saturday night. The gesture of goodwill comes after progress was made in talks with the Venezuelan opposition in the Dominican Republic earlier this month. The move was announced by Delcy Rodriguez, the president of the Constituent Assembly, which set up the Truth Commission.
We've made a recommendation for the benefit of more than 80 people. These recommendations have already been made known to the different bodies of the criminal justice system. And there has also been a report that was sent to the President of the Republic. And we hope that in the upcoming hours, this release will be carried out.
Canada has declared persona non grata the Venezuelan ambassador in Ottawa, who had already been recalled by Caracas, as well as the Serbian chargé d'affaires. It follows similar action by Venezuela last week. A statement by the Canadian Foreign Minister, Chrystia Freeland, said, "Canadians will not stand by as the government of Venezuela robs its people of their fundamental democratic and human rights and denies them access to basic humanitarian assistance." On Friday, Venezuela's Constituent Assembly said it was taking action against the Chargé d'Affaires of Canada and the Brazilian ambassador because of their persistent interference in Venezuelan domestic affairs.
We have decided to declare persona non grata to Canada's chargé d'affaires for his persistent and insistent rude and vulgar interference in the internal affairs of Venezuela, despite the fact that the Venezuelan Chancellery has for years called for the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations to be respected, and declare the ambassador of Brazil persona non grata until the de facto government restores constitutional order in this brother country.
Now here's our correspondent Freddie Gillingham with the latest from Caracas.
So just to give you an update on Saturday's announcement where 80 detainees are set to be released. These are detainees who were arrested following the anti-government violence in 2014 and 2017. Yesterday, on Sunday morning, 36 of the detained were released. They were greeted by their friends and family. This is being described as a goodwill Christmas gesture. However, I think it's something much more than that. I think it really shows clarity that the dialogue between the opposition and the government is really moving forward and that they are finding democratic solutions to their problems. There is another set of dialogue which is scheduled for the 11th and 12th of January. The two sides will be meeting again in Santo Domingo, and let's hope that resolutions like we've seen over the weekend can continue. Thank you, and back to you in the studio.
That was Freddie Gillingham from Caracas. And we'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Guatemala has followed the example of President Donald Trump and announced it will move its embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. The government of President Jimmy Morales was one of only 8 that voted with the United States in a debate at the United Nations General Assembly last week. Honduras, along with 5 Pacific Island states, were the others to defend Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem, which has triggered protests across the Muslim world. And Israel's foreign ministry welcomed Guatemala's move, and this is what it said.
Israel is very happy about the decision taken by the government of Guatemala to move the embassy back to Jerusalem. We believe that it is an important sign of friendship, and a country such as Guatemala, which has been a friend of Israel for many, many years, is clearly in a position to show that Jerusalem is the capital of the State of Israel.
A 7-year-old child died and 13 others were injured when a gas tank exploded at a restaurant in Ecuador's capital, Quito, on Christmas Eve. The incident occurred just after 11 at night as patrons celebrated the festivities. The building partially collapsed and 6 vehicles at the site were also damaged. Authorities say the number of injured may increase. 22 people were seriously burned in a fireworks explosion at Las Parrandas Festival, a famous Cuban carnival, in the town of Remedios on Christmas Eve. Among those injured were 6 children between the ages of 11 and 15, and all those hurt were local residents, the authorities said. Two of the town's neighborhoods compete each year to put on the biggest show of fireworks for the festivities. The cause of the explosion is being investigated. Now for a look back at one of the big stories in 2017. Honduras was hit by a political crisis early this month after an alleged electoral fraud was committed during the presidential elections of November 26. We have prepared a special report.
Just hours after Honduras held its presidential elections, the opposition alliance candidate Salvador Nasralla celebrated his victory against President and candidate Juan Orlando Hernández. With more than 70% of the ballot boxes processed by the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, he had a 5-point lead, and the Central American country was hopeful of a new government after years of political crisis and corruption scandals.
It's a shame that President Juan Orlando Hernández is such a sore loser. We have accepted all the tally sheets they've presented, even if they had inconsistencies, and in spite of that, we are winning. What we want is to create jobs for the Honduran people. They need it. All our efforts will focus on creating jobs for more than 6 million of the poor.
But then, mysteriously, the Electoral Tribunal servers went down for more than a day, and Nasralla's lead evaporated, allowing Hernández to edge ahead by 3,000 votes. Faced with mounting criticism, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal stopped releasing any more results. Opposition supporters took to the streets across the country, while international observers said these events damaged the credibility of the electoral process.
This country will keep this ongoing peaceful mobilization. We're facing an electoral fraud, a fraud that was planned, and we are not going to allow this. We cannot be subjected to an electoral tribunal no one recognizes anymore.
This flower represents peace. People in Honduras have joined together because we all want peace in our country. We do not agree with the current government.
We are demanding the state to respect Honduras' popular will. The people decided that Nasralla should be the next president. They're still in the elections, and we're tired of so many injustices. That is why the people are protesting, to demand authorities to respect the people's popular will. Nasralla, president.
As both candidates claim victory, the long silence from the Supreme Electoral Tribunal provoked political chaos. The opposition alliance denounced a systematic electoral manipulation and coup, while the president and candidate Juan Orlando Hernández thanked his supporters for choosing him as the next president of Honduras.
Al finalizar la decisión, favorece a uno de los candidatos, pero...
In order to determine the decision, it favors one of the candidates, but we also have to say that Hondurans have made a decision, have voted, and what we're doing is respecting the decision that they took. The tribunal has not modified any result, has not modified any ballot. What we have simply done is count the ballots which were not correct.
A huge amount of exit polls are being processed in real time as the ballots come in, and the count is more than clear and resounding that we won this election. That is what the polls say, and that is what the results we are seeing from the count are saying.
As the crisis in the country deepened, Hernández's Conservative National Party called on their supporters to defend their victory, and both sides confronted each other in the capital. At least 14 people were killed at the hands of the military police, dozens injured, and more than 800 detained, a situation denounced by activists and international observers.
It would be important to appeal to social calm and to wait for the results to be verified by everyone involved. For all the political parties to call for calm and, yes, of course, condemn every kind of violence that has occurred and which are not permitted in a democratic country.
2 weeks after Election Day, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal announced that the partial recount demanded by the opposition alliance of almost 5,000 election ballots showed the same result as before, but the opposition lodged a formal challenge to the result of the presidential elections and called for a vote-by-vote recount of all 18,000 ballot boxes to be carried out by an independent international commission.
We did not find in any ballot box we opened evidence of fraud, evidence of vote manipulation, evidence of ballot annulment without a reasoning, evidence of increase of votes without a reason in favor of a candidate. The ballots we have opened are the result of the will of the Hondurans expressed on November 26th.
We are not making a simple demand, and I am very sure that the Electoral Tribunal can realize this. But the whole world knows about what is happening, and therefore I do not believe that the whole world will allow Honduras be robbed of the people's will.
One of the most extraordinary moments in this unresolved crisis was when several units of the Honduran police rebelled, including the elite Cobra Brigade. They refused to repress the protesters and said they were going on strike until there was a recount.
Our people are free, sovereign, and we are here to protect them. Therefore, we cannot confront and repress their rights. This is not about political ideas or labor demands. We are simply expressing our disagreements with what is happening.
As the police withdrew to the barracks, the protesters celebrated and chanted, "Police, our friends, the people are with you." But after 3 weeks of confusion and outcry, the Electoral Court in Honduras declared Juan Orlando Hernández as the new president, although the Organization of American States called for new elections to be held. The head of the OAS observer mission repeated that the poll had been marred by irregularities.
The Electoral Observer Mission considered that it has observed a process of low electoral quality and therefore cannot settle the doubts over what has been announced today. The mission regrets once again the incidents of violence that have occurred in the elections, in different phases of the electoral process, and calls once again for all actors to stay calm and act responsibly.
Opposition supporters immediately took to the streets to protest, as they did almost every day since the poll on November 26th, to denounce what they see as a fraud.
Known for its unique culture, the Night of the Radishes was held in Mexico's Oaxaca region on December 23rd. Unique displays were carved into the red and white vegetables in this tradition, which is now in its 120th year. It started when vegetable vendors decorated their stalls with carvings to show off their goods. Over 140 artisans displayed their work among the numerous creative designs. The event drew an estimated 100,000 spectators to downtown Oaxaca to view the displays. And Mexico also celebrates the festive season with an emblematic plant which only grows in this country, where it is known as the Christmas Eve plant. Other countries call it the Eastern flower or the Inca crown. Our correspondent in Mexico City sent this special report.
The Aztecs named this plant Quetzalcoatl and used it to create pigments and herbal remedies as an offering to Tonatzin, the earth goddess. When the Aztecs were evangelized, it received the name of Christmas Eve, a flower that is cultivated for 9 months.
We plant the seed in March and take care of it until May. In June, we do something called pinchada. We cut the tips of the plant so that more flowers are born.
This plant comes from Mexico and is currently the most sold flower in the world. This year alone, farms planted 25 million seeds all around the country.
They are very delicate. We have to water it flower by flower, one by one. And we also have to feed it at least twice a week, with compost, special fertilizers that we use according to the plant's growth.
Ana Gomez's family has cultivated this flower for generations. This activity has become the financial support of thousands of people from Milpa Alta, Tlalhuac, Tlalpan, y Ochimilco to the country's capital.
This time of year is very meaningful for us because we have clients that have been coming for years now. We have couples that got married and the next year they come with their kids. We become part of their family traditions.
This star-shaped flower with more than 300 varieties has become a symbol of the festivities.
It's a way to remember Christmas, to see things with life and color. The strong red color of the flowers is what I enjoy the most.
The cultivation of the Christmas Eve plant has created more than 3,000 jobs and has sold more than $23 million worth, especially in the states located in the center and south of the country. In Europe, people have named it the friendship flower because of its beauty and color.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Now here are some of the other news stories that are making international headlines.
In Vietnam are prepared to move 1 million people from low-lying areas along the south coast as a typhoon that hit the Philippines on Friday approaches. The storm killed 230 people in the Philippines and is expected to make landfall in the evening. Vietnam's Disaster Prevention Committee said 74,000 people had been moved to safety from vulnerable areas. Philippine authorities have ordered a criminal investigation into a shopping mall fire on Saturday that authorities say likely killed 37 people, including call center staff from an American firm. The country's Justice Secretary announced the inquiry as firemen prepared to enter what remained of the NCCC mall located in Davao. The firemen hope to retrieve those who perished in the blaze. At least 11 people were killed when a suicide bomber launched an attack near an Afghan intelligence agency compound in Kabul. Another 5 were injured when the attacker struck as workers were arriving at the National Directorate of Security Offices. This latest attack comes a week after militants stormed an NDS training center in Kabul. The Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for the attack.
The sound was too loud and then suddenly it was too dusty and people were fleeing from every corner. Security forces came quite soon and fearing the possibility of a second explosion, they stopped people getting close to the area.
Pope Francis used his Christmas message to call for a negotiated two-state solution to end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict after U.S. President Donald Trump stoked regional tensions with his recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital.
On
this festive day, let us ask the Lord for peace for Jerusalem and for all the Holy Land. Let us pray that the will to resume dialogue may prevail between the parties and that a negotiated solution can finally be reached, one that would allow the peaceful coexistence of two states within mutually agreed and internationally recognized borders.
The cold weather and lack of sunshine didn't stop hundreds of people from celebrating Christmas Day on Australia's most famous Bondi Beach. Locals as well as tourists posed for photos next to a Christmas tree, some of them even sporting Santa hats. British tourists who were not disturbed by the weather made the most of their first time on the beach.
At home, we were at Christmas, we'd be in front of the fire, wearing like jumpers and scarves, trying to keep warm, but here it's on the beach in our swimsuits. Yeah, amazing!
Ecuador is celebrating Christmas with countless traditions that show its cultural diversity and its Christian faith. Homes and public spaces are the perfect stage to recreate the birth of Jesus. We have more of this tradition in the next report.
In the St. Francis Church in Quito's Old Town, nativity scenes are on show, expressions of faith that are a part of the traditional Christmas celebrations. The birth of Jesus is recreated in more than 60 nativity scenes, some Ecuadorian, some foreign, including one from the Quito Art School of the 17th century. But there's also another kind of celebration.
People get together for dinner on the night of the 24th. Before that, Catholics have the custom of going to Christmas Eve Mass. In the old days, we had to wait until midnight for the Mass, and then have dinner afterwards. Then came the presents, which nowadays have become an exchange of gifts.
This traditional celebration of Christmas for families, friends and colleagues It's synonymous with sharing. Prayers, gifts, dinners, lights and carol singing at their best make December a very particular time of the year.
In our family, we pray, especially on the 9th day of Christmas. And on Christmas Day, we go to Mass together as a family.
Christmas has a very special meaning for the Christian faithful.
For us that know Jesus Christ, we understand this as the biggest symbol of Christianity when Christ came to give his life for us.
This time is the time of the year when communities throughout Ecuador, and especially here in the capital, take the time to celebrate Christmas with all its cultural expressions, in preparation for bidding goodbye of the year that has passed.
Christmas festivities are in full swing in Venezuela too. Despite an economic blockade and a short supply of goods, Venezuelans are still getting into the Christmas spirit, which includes eating their most celebrated festive food. Our correspondent in Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, went to try some.
Christmas shopping is in full swing in downtown Caracas. The streets are bustling with people as Christmas fast approaches, not the scenes you would expect from a so-called humanitarian crisis zone. Although basic shortages are a reality, Venezuela's most famous delicacy, the hallaca, is not. The hallaca is an iconic dish in Venezuelan culture. The food consists of European, indigenous and African ingredients. Thereby it symbolizes the country's multicultural heritage.
Keeping the traditions is important because if we lose it, we are not going to be the same. We should keep it to continue feeling Venezuelan.
The dish is solely produced just for Christmas and is traditionally affiliated with the family. Entire families often get together to produce and sell the dish. At this particular stand, the hallaca is selling at a subsidized price as Venezuelans unite to ease the financial burden at Christmas, a period where the family comes first. Tasty. So as an economic crisis here worsens in Venezuela and food scarcity becomes an even greater reality, Venezuelans here still find time to enjoy their most famous festive food, washed down with a glass of papelón. Feliz Navidad, or shall I say, Merry Christmas.
And we've come to the end of this evening news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching, and we wish you a very happy Christmas.
Different causes motivate people to look for new horizons. We'll have the right to move freely.